All right, y'all, we are going to talk about Yale auxiliary rim locks as evidenced by this beautiful full color brochure. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, y'all, so we are going to talk about Yale auxiliary rim locks as evidenced by this beautiful full color brochure now. The 112 heavy duty deadbolt, and actually we're going to be talking about the 112 and a quarter, which is kind of unique. I've never seen, this is the only lock manufacturer that I've ever seen use fractions for their product numbers. And you can see in their Jimmy Proof deadlock, which Jimmy Proof has the pin that goes up and down and locks into the strike plate thing. It's also called a quarter for the double cylinder version. So, we're going to talk about the 112 heavy-duty deadbolt, and we have a few of them! Yay! Okay, so let's talk about it. It's pretty rare nowadays. Now, in the U.S. market, this is really like the heaviest, seriously heaviest duty deadbolt type thing that you could feasibly put on a door. Super heavy duty bolt, as you can see, comparing it to this Schlage A series latch. Huge heavy lock. It is surface mounted on the door like that with some screws, operated with a rim cylinder on the outside that the bar goes through and turns the plate here on the inside, which when we get it open I will show you what is in there and how to take it apart and rekey it if you have never done so. This is the strike plate. It's mounted on the jamb. You do have to do a lot of chiseling to get this to work. You see this a lot. It's very good to have one of these. I've seen these on metal doors and then just cut into the metal frame. But they can be used on wood doors. Obviously with this going on the jamb, it has to sink down, so you have to cut out all this. Does require quite a bit of woodwork to make fit, but once done, with these long screws here and then the screws here, hopefully you have a really secure installation. So again, we've got two different kinds of rim cylinders. I'm going to talk about the slightly different changes in those, and then I'm going to take one of these apart to show you. So when you come up on one of these on a door, the first thing you're going to run into, almost always, these came with both flathead and security screws. And there are 4 of them, and very frequently you would run across one that had the security screw, either in 2 spots, all 4 spots, or maybe just 1. With these, obviously with the flathead, you can just use the flathead. There are a couple of ways to take the security screws off. Now these security screws, if you were not familiar with them, when you can tighten it down because it's got flat edges in the tightening position, so you can screw it in, but when you go to focus camera, hold on, let's get this camera focused, there we go. When you go to remove it, it's angled, so your screwdriver is allowed to kind of slip off of it like that. So you can get it off with the flathead if you put a lot of pressure on it, like put a lot of pressure on it, push in real hard and break it, especially on a metal door or even a wood door where there's a pilot hole that's been drilled. Once you break that initial seal, it's usually fairly easy to back it out the rest of the way. However, if you can't get it with that, they do make, I believe these are Kedex, I'm not sure, these are one-way screw removers. There are 3 common sizes, which are 6 to 8. Whoop. 6 to 8, 8 to 10, and 10 to 12. So the 6 to 8 or the 10 to 12 or 8 to 10 will work. And that is, these are just basically 2 round posts. And that kind of allows it when you're pushing on it to, oh, come on.
I know.
Hey! The difficulties of filming when you're trying to run the shop. So anyway, if you push real hard on this, it will kind of grab into the head of the screw and you will be able to break it loose. Again, once you break it loose, typically it's pretty easy to unscrew, especially when it's been put in a metal door. The third way, if you cannot get either of those other ones to work, is to, and this can mess up the edge, of course, with one that looks like this, it's not a big deal. But if you can grab a pair of vice grips and clamp it on like this, it's kind of hard to do because it's a little slippy. But if you take a pair of, say, alligator pliers or even vice grips, clamp it on there, and that will let you turn it and break it loose in case that's just too stripped out to work no matter what. Okay, on the outside cylinder, once you get this part off of the door, you will see this holding the rim cylinder in. Typically it is using these just break off screws with a flat or Phillips head. You just unscrew that and your cylinder comes out. So depending on the age of it, you've got the more common style, the older style clip like this, or a totally circular clip. So with these, the easiest way to do this, and you will see it once we get it off, if you take this, basically you have to make sure this is far this way and clamp a pair of pliers right there and just give it a squeeze and a push, and you will see it come out like that. So to get it back in, you would simply squeeze it in totally until it snaps into place. And on this style, it is a flexi clip. I'm not real fond of these, but it is just a bendable clip, and you use a little flathead screwdriver here. You don't lose your tailpiece, but once you bend it out of the way, you pull it off like so, and then to put it back on, take it, get your tailpiece bar, make sure it's centered in there, and then take a pair of pliers and squeeze it back round. So when you do this, you have to make sure that clip didn't get kind of bent up enough. You got to check your key. Always check your key after you key it before you put it back on the door. Save you some time. Because sometimes if this is like, turns out to be wavy, because when you bend it, it kind of puts a wave into it. Sometimes it will make the key difficult to insert, or it'll make the key difficult to turn. So that bendable clip has to be kind of put back on kind of well. I have these out because every so often some enterprising soul will take long carriage bolts and do a through bolt type situation on the door. This one, see how the holes are drilled out. This one I believe had these on there. So you can see these will have any number of crazy variants depending on how stripped out the holes were. One of the very few things that goes wrong with these, you can see here. Let's take a new one in comparison. One of the things that will happen with these is this plate where the flat tailpiece goes into will get wallowed out, and it causes it to be really floppy in there. And the more it wallows out, the more time goes by, the more it wallows out, the more likely it is to just, you know, just in general cause problems altogether. So to take this apart, we're going to go ahead and do this because, again, I don't want this video to go too long, but you set it down, take this off. Now rim cylinders are typically going to be your 5-pin standard Yale Keyway Y1. The interior cylinder is only the first 3 cuts, and you will see why. So on the inside of this plate is this little turning mechanism. Now when you're putting it back together, that little mechanism right here has to engage in that hole. So when you put it back on, it cannot be like that. It has to be turned just right, so that when you put it in, that goes into that hole, which is what allows it to actuate this part. All right, so to take it out, you simply lift up here. Try not to get this spring. Try to make sure that spring doesn't do anything crazy. But if you just gently lift up and kind of push this through, your whole bolt mechanism will come out. Fairly easy there. I'm gonna set this down right here. And that exposes this screw. Now again, when you're putting it back together, you want to make sure that it's greasy. You want this, just like the other side, this goes into that. So when you turn the inside cylinder, that is what engages it from the inside. So when you're putting it back together, you have to kind of angle, push in, and drop that into that. Okay, so let's take it back apart. Once you get that off, we are almost to the cylinder. Take two, you got 2 little flathead screws here. Am I taking one off that's got a... I am taking one off that's got... It does not have a key. All right, that's all right. We'll shim it real quick. Should have taken one of the other ones apart. So we're going to back that screw out. And we're going to back this screw out. Now when you're putting it back on, putting this little plate back on, you need to make sure, so your keyhole is like that. You can force that cylinder out, but I just leave it because they kind of pin it together. But the bottom of your key, we'll just take this key as an example. The bottom of your key will project out through there. So if you put this on upside down, your key won't be able to go all the way in. So that is what that little oval cutout in the plate right there is for. Is for the tip of the key to go. Oops, sorry about that. It's for the tip of the key. So that plate also has to go back on correctly, of course, after you put the turning mechanism on. All right, so to do this, let me go grab a shim since I failed to bring one of those with me. Okay, using just a blank key and a shim. We are going to shim it like any other lock, just so that I can show you the cylinder. So again, when you're rekeying these, you have to choose a key that is different from the one you are rekeying in the first 3 cuts. And we can see a little bitty 3-pin. Three-pin cylinder there. So you just have to make sure that your first 3 cuts are different on the new keys that you're keying it to. Key it up, run the follower back through, or the plug back through, turn it, put your plate there, put your little plate on like that, making sure that your oval part is facing down. you find your little screws. Where did my other little screw go? Oh, there it is. Go ahead and tighten your screw down. Whenever I'm tightening little tiny screws, well, pretty much any screw, I never tighten it down. It's never a good idea to tighten it down fully because you want the plate to be just a bit loose so that you can finagle it into position. So tighten down one almost all the way. Tighten your second screw down all the way, and then come back to your first screw. Tighten it down the rest of the way. Check your key. Of course, I didn't key it, so we cannot physically check the key, but make sure your key works and turns around. Pull the key back out. Put your little pivot mechanism, for lack of better words, right there. Angle this. Use your finger on the side here to kind of guide it. It has barely enough room to angle out and angle back in, but it certainly will go in and out this way. So once we get it back in here, you want to make sure your pin engages right there. Again, try your key. Should fully throw. Key should fully come out, and it should fully come back the other way. And then turn your plate mechanism there, making sure it goes in to that hole. Hold it, try it. You can see there if you project too far in, like I said earlier, if that tailpiece is too long, it's not gonna work correctly. So that tailpiece has to be cut just right. And then lastly, put your screws back on here and reinstall on the door and collect your paycheck. All right, guys, I appreciate you watching as always. If you haven't, hit that like and subscribe button. If you have any questions or comments or anything else, hit me up with them in the comments section. Thanks again for watching. Y'all have a great weekend. It's Friday. I am, oh shit, I still got about 45 minutes, but I am out of here soon. Start showing my watches and videos. I've only got like 5 or 6, but yeah, that's another video that I'm doing. All right, Skagen. All right, so Yale auxiliary rim locks 112 1/4. Thanks, guys. See ya.